So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. Now the purpose of this lecture series is to cover the entire day's current affairs in a short span of time. That is why we have brought out this lecture series, so that you don't have to spend your entire day just reading the newspaper. Now, I say this always and I'm going to repeat it again. At the beginning of the lecture I say this, that just watching this lecture would be job half done. If you just watch this lecture, it won't serve you any purpose, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well, and you can revise it from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram platform. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Okay? Alright, this information I have communicated to you. It's an important information. That's why I say this at the beginning of every lecture. Alright then, let's quickly jump into the lecture. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Okay? So, daily current affairs and 11th July Friday, and here is the list of topics. Okay, so today we are going to be covering these 5 topics. Number 1 on this list is Bihar Special Intensive Revision. Basically, this is related to Election Commission of India's revision of electoral rolls. It is quite controversial. Opposition parties are filing cases against Election Commission of India in the Supreme Court. So we will talk about what this intensive revision of electoral rolls is. Okay. Then we'll talk about Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, because Kailash Mansarovar Yatra has started after a gap of 5 years. Now this is very important with respect to cultural relationship between India and China is concerned, okay, because the thing is that Kailash Mansarovar, the pilgrimage that many Indians go to, lies under Chinese control, okay. So we'll talk about the cultural significance and geographical location of Kailash Mansarovar, okay, because questions can be asked out of the geography of the region or the cultural significance of it. Okay. Then, well, 11th July every year is celebrated as World Population Day. So what has United Nations published on the occasion of this year's Population Day? Okay, what was the theme of 2025 World Population Day? We'll talk about this. Then we'll talk about TALASH Initiative launched by Ministry of Tribal Affairs, okay, with respect to education of tribal youth. And in the end, we'll talk about a special technology that can prevent train accidents in future. And in that special technology, we'll be using AI. So AI to prevent rail accidents. We'll talk about this new technology as well. Okay. So these are the 5 topics that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with Bihar Special Intensive Revision. Alright. Now listen to me carefully. You see, Bihar Assembly elections are just round the corner. They're not that far. And just before the elections, Election Commission of India has decided to revise the voter list, also known as electoral rolls. And they have decided to prepare the electoral rolls or voter list from scratch, from start. Okay? Now, opposition parties believe that this is a way of disenfranchising some of their voters, some of their supporters. So some of the supporters of Congress Party, RJD, would get disenfranchised. They won't be included in this new voter list. That's their fear, that's their insecurity, that's their allegation. So they are rallying against this special revision of electoral rolls being conducted by Election Commission of India. Now recently they filed a petition in the Honorable Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has admitted that petition against this action of Election Commission of India. Okay. Now it is pertinent for us to know what this revision of electoral rolls is. Okay, what authority does Election Commission of India has to do this? And is Supreme Court within its authority or right in hearing this plea, hearing this petition? Can you challenge this action of Election Commission, or Election Commission is well within its authority to do all of this? So we'll talk about these constitutional questions. Okay, okay then. So Bihar Special Intensive Revision. First of all, you need to understand this term Special Intensive Revision. So let's talk about this first. Okay. So Special Intensive Revision. Now listen to me carefully, because I'm going to talk about certain constitutional provisions. Okay. So Article 324 of the Constitution authorizes the Election Commission of India to supervise, okay, conduct and control elections. Supervision, control and conduct of elections lies completely with Election Commission of India. So Election Commission of India is the supreme authority with respect to superintendence, control and conduct of elections. Alright. But, well, Constitution also says that Parliament by law may regulate some of the actions of Election Commission of India, and Parliament by law can create procedures with respect to election conduct of elections in India, and Election Commission of India has to follow that law. Okay, so basically Parliament by law can regulate elections. Clear? Now for that, Parliament enacted two laws: Representation of People's Act 1950 and Representation of People's Act 1951. Okay, now Representation of People's Act authorizes Election Commission of India to prepare electoral rolls. Okay, basically voters list. Clear? Because every citizen has the right to vote. So, well, you have to include them in a voter list so that there are no duplication or unauthorized voting, right? So that power is regulated through Representation of People's Act 1950, and 1951 basically authorizes Election Commission of India to conduct elections. So 1951 law regulates election process, 1950 law regulates voter list, electoral rolls. Okay? Make sense? Now, currently we are not talking about conduct of elections, we are talking about preparation of electoral rolls. So let's focus on Representation of People's Act 1950. Okay? Now, as per Representation of People's Act 1950, Section 21 allows Election Commission of India to prepare electoral rolls. Okay? Plus, Section 21 also authorizes Election Commission of India to revise these electoral rolls. Okay? Update these electoral rolls. Now, there are two types of revisions that Election Commission of India can do with respect to electoral rolls. Okay? One is known as intensive revision, also known as special intensive revision. The other is known as summary revision. Okay? Now, when Election Commission of India prepares the electoral rolls from scratch, from start, so it deletes all the previous voter list and creates a new voter list, that is intensive revision. And summary revision is addition, subtraction, deletion, updation of existing electoral rolls. Okay, so when you are just updating electoral rolls, changing some things about it, summary revision. When you are scrapping the old list and creating a new list, that is intensive revision. Now, Election Commission of India is conducting intensive revision of Bihar's electoral rolls. And that is why opposition parties are not happy with it, because they smell some things cooking. They smell some foul play. Okay? On behalf of the government and Election Commission, they basically think that their supporters or their voters would be disenfranchised. They won't be allowed to vote because their names won't be included in this new voter list. Clear? Makes sense? And that is why they have filed a petition in the Honorable Supreme Court. Okay? And basically, they have challenged this action of Election Commission of India on 3 grounds. Okay? Basically 2-3 grounds, but the argument is very simple. So, arguments by petitioners. First of all, they say that, well, Constitution allows each and every citizen of India who is above the age of 18 to vote. Now, by doing this, well, Election Commission of India might disenfranchise a citizen of India who is above the age of 18 years. So, they are basically asking the Supreme Court to check this action of Election Commission. Second, they say that in this special intensive revision, the burden of proof has been transferred to citizens. The burden of proof should be on Election Commission of India, but Election Commission of India is saying that residents of Bihar should prove themselves that they are citizens of Bihar. Okay, so burden of proof is there. Third, well, they are basically saying that Representation of People's Act 1951, which deals with conduct of elections, okay, well, it does not allow just before the elections that you can prepare electoral roll list from scratch. Basically, they are saying that Election Commission of India has generated a new form that all voters have to fill. This new enumeration form cannot be published as per Representation of People's Act 1951. Long story cut short, you don't have to remember all these three arguments. You just have to remember that this action of election commission has been challenged by opposition parties. Okay. Now, thing is that Supreme Court has admitted this petition. Okay, so Supreme Court is going to review the action of Election Commission of India. And while admitting this petition, Supreme Court is going to refer to its previous judgment. So Supreme Court basically gave a judgment in 1997 with respect to powers of Election Commission. And it is going to use that judgment of its, okay, to give a decision on this current petition. Now we need to know what that 1997 judgment was. Okay. So what was that 1997 Supreme Court judgment? It is also known as MS Gill versus Election Commission of India. Okay. Well, this petition was basically related to what happened was, I'll summarize the entire event. What happened was that, well, in 1977, there were elections in Punjab. And in one constituency of Punjab, there was this case of destruction of ballot boxes. Okay. Therefore, Election Commission of India ordered re-election in that area. Okay. Now, the party that was victorious in that election, well, they were not happy with it because now they have to fight again for elections. So, well, MS Gill, who was basically an authority, he was in charge of counting votes, basically. He filed a petition in Punjab and Haryana High Court challenging this decision of Election Commission of India. Okay, this is what, I mean, the issue was more detailed, but I'm just giving you a summary of it. That was the case. That is why it is known as MS Gill versus Election Commission of India. Now, in front of the Supreme Court or the High Court, okay, because the case went to High Court gave its judgment, and then an appeal was filed in the Supreme Court. So, Supreme Court gave its final judgment in 1997. Okay, that was the story. Now, there were three questions before Supreme Court which needed to be answered in this case. First question was, can Election Commission reorder elections? Is it within its power? Okay. Second, well, many people alleged that Election Commission of India just reordered this election without listening to both sides of the argument. Without doing proper investigation, they just reordered. Okay. So this violates the principles of natural justice. So can Election Commission do that? Okay. And the third question was, well, Article 329 basically says that Election Commission shall function as per the provisions of the Constitution or laws made by Parliament or State Legislative Assembly. And any such question with respect to elections shall not be challenged in any court of law. So the courts were barred from any process with respect to elections. Okay, the courts were barred. Except if there is a violation of law, if someone won the elections through a fraud, then the Parliament or State Legislative Assembly will specify how that dispute shall be handled. Okay, in that case, High Court has the jurisdiction. If there is any fraud election victory, then you can file a petition in High Court, but High Courts cannot interfere in the workings of Election Commission. Basically, that's what Article 329 says. So Article 329 basically is a question of judicial review. So this question of judicial review was also the question that this 1997 judgment had to solve. Okay, so what did the 1997 judgment of Supreme Court say? It said that Article 324 authorizes the Election Commission. Therefore, Election Commission of India is the supreme authority. It can reorder elections and it can revise electoral rolls also. Second thing that Supreme Court said was that, look, as far as laws, election laws made by Parliament or State Legislative Assembly is concerned, Election Commission shall administer those laws. But there can be some areas where the law is silent. In that case, Election Commission of India can use its judgment. You can't challenge that judgment of Election Commission that law was silent, and how can you do this? If law is silent, Election Commission will fill that gap. And the third thing is judicial review. So the High Court and the Supreme Court said that yes, actions of Election Commission are subject to judicial review. But the judicial review shall take place after the elections, not during the elections. During the elections, courts cannot interfere. After the elections, well, judicial review is permissible. So let's see what happens, okay, in this Bihar case. Though 1997 judgment says that, well, if elections are going on, then Supreme Court cannot interfere. But elections are not going on. We are way before elections. So let's see. But this was the judgment. And please remember the two distinctions: special intensive revision and special summary revision. Just remember that. Revision of electoral rolls and the two laws: Representation of People's Act 1950, Representation of People's Act 1951. Just remember that. Okay? Alright. Now let's move on to second news item, and that is Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Now look, Mount Kailash holds religious significance, okay, and many pilgrims from Hindu tradition, Buddhist tradition, Jain tradition, they visit this pilgrimage site, okay. But the thing is that this pilgrimage site lies in Tibet, and Tibet is currently under Chinese control. So therefore you require Chinese cooperation to make this pilgrimage. Now, well, this pilgrimage center has been opened after a gap of 5 years now. It has opened after 5 years. Initially, it was stopped in 2020 because of COVID-19 pandemic. And after 2022 and 23, well, this pilgrimage was not opened because the relationship between the two countries, India and China, were fraught, to say the least, okay? They were not very good. So that is why this pilgrimage was stopped. But now the ice has broken, the ice has melted. The two sides, India and China, have started engaging, and they have started with this Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, this pilgrimage that Indians take every year to this holy site, which is holy in many religions. Clear? Now this was in the news, but questions can be asked with respect to geography of Kailash Mansarovar. Okay, Mansarovar is the lake and Kailash is the mountain. Okay, so geographical significance. Okay, what is the geography? Where does it lie? All that. Which rivers come from this area? All these questions can be asked. And then next is we'll talk about, well, cultural significance. In which religious traditions is this site considered holy? So we'll talk about all those religions as well. Okay, make sense? Clear? All right then. Let's begin Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Okay, so first let's talk about the geography of this region. So basically the thing is that the pilgrimage site is Mount Kailash, which is around 6,000 meters tall, and it has two lakes: Mansarovar Lake, which is holy for Hindus, and Rakshas Lake, Rakshas Tal. Okay, combined Mount Kailash and these two lakes are the pilgrimage centers. Okay, now first let's talk about the geography of the region. Okay, so this particular pilgrimage site lies in Tibet Autonomous Region, okay, which is under Chinese control, and this particular area lies very close to the Tri-Junction area. Now what is this Tri-Junction area? This Tri-Junction area is an area where borders of India, China or Tibet, and Nepal meet. So this is this area where the borders of these, the territories of these three countries meet. Okay, China, Nepal and India. This is known as the Tri-Junction area. So this Mount Kailash is very close to that. Clear? Clear? Now Mount Kailash, well, also known as Gang Rinpoche in Tibetan, is a very high mountain, 6,638 meters. It has two lakes: Mansarovar Lake, Holy Lake, which is a freshwater lake, and a saltwater lake called Rakshas Tal. Clear? Now through this region, four major rivers of the entire south region emanate. Okay, so around this region, four major rivers come out. One is Yarlung Zangpo, which in India is known as Brahmaputra. Then Indus comes from this region, Satluj comes from this region, and Karnali, which flows through Nepal and enters India and is known as Ghagra, a major tributary of Ganga river. So these four major rivers come from this area. So this is the geography. Okay. Now let's talk about its cultural significance. Now listen to me carefully. This religious site or this pilgrimage site is considered holy in 4 religions, 4 religious traditions. So let's talk about that, okay? So it is also known as storied pilgrimage which is for spiritual growth, okay? First of all, it is holy for Hindus because it is considered abode of Lord Shiva, okay? Then it is holy for Jains because you see Jains have 24 spiritual teachers, okay, which are known as Tirthankars. Mahavir Jain was the 24th Tirthankar. The first spiritual teacher or Tirthankar was Rishabhnath. Now it is believed by Jains that Rishabhnath, the first Tirthankar in Jain tradition, achieved enlightenment on Mount Kailash. So it is important for Jains also. For Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists, well, that particular region, that Mount Kailash is considered navel of the universe. So it is important. And there is another religion that is native to Tibetans and it is known as Bon tradition, Bon religion. Now it is believed that before Buddhism came to Tibet, well, the practitioners, the religious practice that was followed in Tibet was Bon. So basically, Bon religion is a pre-Buddhist religion in Tibet. And still there are a few people who still follow Bon religion in Tibet. But mostly now Tibet is Buddhist. But it is a pre-Buddhist religion, okay? Even in Bon religion, which is a pre-Buddhist religion of Tibet, this area, this Mount Kailash is considered abode of sky goddess Sipaimen, their sky goddess. So it is important in 4 religious traditions. Clear? That's about it. Alright. Now let's shift our focus to third news item of the day, and that is UN World Population Day. So 11th July every year is considered World Population Day by United Nations. Now this year in 2025, well, United Nations also came out with certain facts regarding population of the world. In those facts, it also talked about population of India. And it had to say some really good things about population of India, okay? First of all, generally as Indians, we think that population is bad, high population is bad, right? But that's not always the case because there are many countries in the world which are suffering from low population, and low population is generally considered very bad for the economy of a country. And high population, especially high youth population, is considered good for economic development. And India is in that phase, okay? High youth population is also known as demographic dividend. Demography means study of populations. So demographic dividend means when a country has high youth population, okay? And on this World Population Day, United Nations has said that India is in this sweet spot where it has a very high number of youth, and India can capitalize on it to become a developed country, okay? So what is this issue of demographic dividend all about? We'll talk about all these things, okay? On the occasion of World Population Day. So UN World Population Day celebrated every year on 11th of July. Alright. Now this year's theme was, as per United Nations, the theme of World Population Day this year was empowering young people to create the families they want in a fair and hopeful world. Basically, the theme of this year's World Population Day focuses on youth. That youth should be given more freedom to build the kind of family they want. If they want 5 children, they should be able to do that. If they want no children, they should be able to do that. They should be given all the social permission, economic permission, and even technological permission to do whatever they want with respect to their family. They should take the decisions, okay? Generally, they can't take these reproductive and family related decisions because of social pressure, sometimes economic pressure also, because you don't have enough economic resources. That's why you decide to have fewer children. And technological also. Sometimes there are unwanted pregnancies because some people in the world do not have access to contraceptives. So this basically destroys their future planning. So the youth of the world should be allowed to plan their families the way they want. All the social barriers, all the economic barriers and technological barriers should be reduced. That's the theme. Okay? And this theme resonates with the resolution of 1994 International Conference on Population and Development. Okay, ICDP basically. Now, as per this theme and as per various reports published by United Nations, well, they have said something about India's demographic dividend. Okay. Now, first of all, you need to know what demographic dividend is. So, hear me out carefully. Okay, this is very important if you're not aware of demographic dividend. Okay. Now, listen to me carefully. Okay. The thing is that, well, people below the age of 15 and people above the age of, let's suppose, 64 globally. Okay. These people are called dependents. Okay. The reason why we call them dependents is because people who are children below the age of 15, they don't produce economic wealth. They don't add to the GDP of any country. Why? Because they're not working, they're children. And senior citizens, they have retired. They don't add to the GDP of a country. They don't do any economic activities. They don't add wealth. Clear? But these people survive. These people depend on the wealth produced by people who belong to 15 to 63 age group. People who belong to this age group are known as working age population. Now, working age population is the population that adds wealth, that creates wealth by working, that adds to the GDP. So, the wealth created by this group, this age group, 15 to 64, okay? The wealth created by this group, well, this wealth is utilized for their welfare as well as the welfare of dependents. Simple? Yes? Makes sense? Now, in some countries it is 15 to 64. In India it is 15 to 59 because for us retirement age is 60. But in some developed countries retirement age is 65. So that is why there is this variation. Nonetheless, you understand the idea. Clear? Now, the country which has higher proportion of working age population is considered in a beneficial, is generally thought to be in a beneficial position. And the country which has lower number or percentage of working age population and higher percentage of dependents, well, they are in a very dangerous position. Why? Because the people who are producing wealth are low in number and the dependents have risen. That is the case with most of the developed countries these days, okay, where, well, dependent senior citizens are high and the people who produce wealth, they are low in number, like Japan, Russia and many other countries. They are suffering from this population crisis because the people who do not produce wealth and depend on wealth produced by others, they are rising and wealth producers are declining. And countries like India, where there is high proportion of working age population, well, they have the benefit of demographic dividend. Okay, so it is a good thing. Plus, most of this working age population also lie in this youth bracket in India. So that is very good opportunity. Clear? Now, many people in United Nations, World Bank and Niti Aayog, they have basically said good things about India's demographic dividend. First of all, UNICEF has said that India has 371 million youth aged between 15 to 29, the highest in the world, offering a unique edge in the global workforce. India has the highest global workforce because it has highest number of youth. This is demographic dividend, right? But there is a catch. It's not enough that you have demographic dividend, because if you have a higher number of youth and that youth is not employed, is unemployed, is uneducated, is unskilled, then that youth will be a burden on society. Okay? Therefore, if you really want to gain out of this demographic dividend, okay, then you have to skill them, educate them, employ them so that they can add to the country's GDP and India can grow. You will waste this demographic dividend if you do not skill this youth population enough, educate them enough. If India invests on healthcare, skilling and employment, India can unlock $1 trillion of GDP by 2030. This is by World Bank and Niti Aayog. So the catch is India needs to basically invest in making this youth employed. Otherwise, this demographic dividend would go to waste. So India has a unique opportunity. India needs to capitalize on it. Make sense? Now, if we talk about the theme of World Population Day, it was empowering young people to create families they want in a fair and hopeful world. Basically, the idea was that you need to reduce all sorts of barriers for young people who are deciding to build a family, right? Now, these barriers are significant in India. Okay, India faces a lot of challenges. First of all, these social barriers are high. And how do we know that? Well, there are so many cases of child marriage in India, where females are married against their will. So youth is not given a choice. Okay. Then because of that, there are unwanted pregnancies also. They are not planning their future. The adults are planning the future for them. So social barriers are there. Plus, in India, employment opportunities for women is very low. Okay. And because females have low employment opportunities, and that is calculated through female labor force participation rate. Because in India, female labor force participation rate is low. So females are not economically empowered. So people, their relatives don't allow them with the decision making, which comes with money. If you're an earning member of your family, well, you are allowed to take some decisions. Because most females are not economically empowered, they are forced to take certain decisions which they do not want. So economic empowerment is important. Plus, sometimes there are unwanted pregnancies because you do not have access to certain technologies, contraceptives and other things. Okay. So access to health services leads to unplanned families. So this is a big challenge. Okay. This is the thing that has been referred to by United Nations. Clear? So these things have to be solved. Though Government of India and civil society groups have taken so many initiatives to solve these problems. Some of these initiatives are Project Udan in Rajasthan, which prevented so many child marriages. Similarly, in Odisha, there was Project Advika, which again prevented child marriages. Then there was this Project Manzil, which basically trained females so that they can get employment, become economically empowered, and become empowered enough to take their own family decisions, reproductive decisions, right? And then there is the most famous Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, which we all know about. Okay, so that's about it. All right, okay. Now let's shift our focus to fourth news item, which is the TALASH Initiative. Okay, it's very small, so we won't spend that much time on it. So TALASH Initiative is basically an initiative launched by Government of India to empower tribal youth educationally. Okay. Because generally educational opportunities and employment opportunities, skilling opportunities do not reach the tribals of India that quickly. So to empower them, educate them, skill them and provide them with many other educational services, we have launched a digital initiative called TALASH Initiative. So let's talk about it, okay? So TALASH Initiative. So about this TALASH Initiative. So this is the thing. Let's read it. National Education Society for Tribal Students, an autonomous organization under Ministry of Tribal Affairs, in partnership with UNICEF India, launched TALASH. Now, full form of TALASH is Tribal Aptitude, Life Skills and Self-Esteem Hub, a national program to support the all-round development of students in Eklavya Model Residential Schools. Okay. Now, what is Eklavya Model Residential Schools? So, there are these schools called Eklavya Model Residential Schools, which are created for tribals only in different tribal areas. These are basically residential schools. That means tribals can live here, live in hostels, study here. Their education, their living, their food, or books, all type of expenditure would be free in these schools. Okay. And this Eklavya Model Residential Schools provides education from class 6 to class 12. Okay, these schools already exist. So within these schools, now you're launching another initiative called TALASH Initiative. Okay, TALASH aims to improve both the education and personal growth of tribal students across India through these EMRs. Clear? Now about TALASH, so it is a digital platform that will have psychometric testing. Okay, so tribal youth can give tests. Now these are basic aptitude tests. These are those types of tests, by giving them you get to know what type of career you should choose. Okay, you know now that there are these tests that children take, which helps them evaluate their skill set and what type of career they should choose, right? So these tests already exist as per NCERT's Tamanna model for other schools. These same psychometric testing would be provided on TALASH platform. Then career counseling module will also be there for tribal students. Then teachers would be trained under this TALASH initiative so that they can help these tribals more. And this would cover 1.38 lakh students across 28 states, 8 UTs by the end of 2025. This is the basic model basically, okay? So, information about Tamanna model, Eklavya model residential schools is available in your notes. So, go through that as well. And now, we'll quickly shift to fifth news item of the day, and that is AI to prevent train accidents. Okay? Now, train accidents is a big thing. And most of the times, these train accidents occur because of some technical faults in the train itself or the track, right? This can be avoided if you keep on repairing trains, if you keep on repairing tracks. But for repairing trains, you need to know, or you need to be aware of the faults in the train. If you're not aware that your train currently has these problems, you won't be able to rectify them, right? So for that, we have launched an AI initiative. And that AI initiative is called by a different name. We'll talk about that. So let's talk about that, okay? So AI to prevent rail accidents. So what was in the news? So the Indian Railways has signed an MOU with Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited to enhance train safety with the installation of artificial intelligence and machine learning based inspection systems. The MOU was signed for the installation of MVIS, that's the name, Machine Vision Based Inspection System, for monitoring the health of trains rolling stock. Now, how would this work out? Okay, so the tracks on which freight trains run. Okay, there are two types of trains: passenger trains, which carry people, and freight trains, which carry goods. Now, there are some railway tracks in India which are only for freight trains. These are dedicated freight corridors. Okay. Now, on these dedicated freight corridors, these railway tracks, such systems would be created. These systems would have high vision cameras. Okay, so whenever a train would pass through these cameras would take high resolution pictures of the trains, and if there is any fault within the train, it would basically issue a red alert. So at the next station, the train could be rectified. That's about it. Now this requires AI. Why? Because the cameras would capture the pictures. Okay, those pictures would be sent to a data center. Now at these data centers, AI systems, AI modules would analyze those pictures. That's where you require AI. So AI would analyze those pictures and try to find faults in the train. Okay, this is the system. That's about it. All right. So the extra information that you need to read is provided in your notes. As far as the understanding part is concerned, that's all you need to understand. Okay. And yes, with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But I say this every time, it will add more value to your preparation if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series and you revise it from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. So please do not forget to do that. And I will see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.